Welcome to DRTSPR show. This is Dr. Tangella Shiva Prasad Reddy alias Dr. TSPR. Namaste, Adab, hello and a warm welcome to D. Narasimha Reddy Garu. Retired from Hyderabad Central University Economics, and everyone wanted him to come on electoral bonds and the poor, the four pillars of Modi campaign, Garib, poor, and then women's emancipation. But we will take his time surely, because yesterday also they were sending me so many messages. What happened to Narasimha Reddy Garu? You are coming on live. But today's topic is very important. Minimum support price for farmers. కనీస మద్దతు ధర రైతులు పండించే ధాన్యానికి. तो हम इसी तरह एमएसपी की बात जो चल रही है आजकल, उसी के ऊपर किसान भाइयों के लिए खेती के ऊपर हम चर्चा ले रहे, क्योंकि बिना अनाज के बिना हम जी सकते हैं क्या? आहार हम लेते बतकेगलमा, without food can we survive? So that is the reason why this topic is more important. Why? Because corporates 20 lakh crores loans waived off, 10 lakhs or whatever it is. For farmers, they don't want to waive even 1 lakh, nor they don't want to give even 1 or 2 lakhs loans per crop or per year also. This is the most dangerous aspect of our economics. Who is creating wealth? They are the farmers. Because if we are healthy, only wealth will come. Manam आरोग्यंगा उंटेने, तो इसी तरह हमको खाने पीने में जो किसान और खेती काम देता है, उसी के वजह से हम आज तंदुरुस्त है और कमा रहे हैं. तो इस तरह की कमाई हमारी स्वास्थ्य होने के ही बाद में आता है. तो स्वास्थ्य अगर है तो हम कमाई कर सकते हैं. तो ऐसे किसान को, खेती को ऋण नहीं मिलता, कॉर्पोरेट को लाखों करोड़ ऋण माफ किया जाता है. क्यों? इसी के ऊपर हम चर्चा करेंगे. थोड़ी बहुत मैं दिखाने की कोशिश करता हूं उनके मांगे क्या है. व्हाट आर द डिमांड्स ऑफ फार्मर्स? आई विल जस्ट ट्राई टू शो यू in just 2 minutes. I'll just wind it up. Farmers empowered like never before, he says. The Honorable Prime Minister here. What he says is in his own official media. From struggling to thriving, farmers empowered like never before. This incredible transformation in the empowerment of farmers highlights their journey from struggle to success. Swipe left to know, there are so many, I don't want to get into that. So this is what he says, empowered farmers, agriculture revolution. My only question to Honorable Prime Minister, then why did farmers come onto the roads? क्यों किसान रोड पे आए 2020 में? आप वो जो 3 अनशन थे उसको वापस क्यों लिया? Why did you take back those farm laws? What happened after that? Again, why farmers are on the roads? Now, what Modi government gave to farmers? All about PM's farmers first policy, Punjab and Haryana. This is doing rounds. Uncover the ways in which Modi government has supported farmers in Haryana and Punjab over the last 10 years. Here are all the details, he says. It is there, it is in the website. But last 10 years, if Punjab and Haryana farmers were happy, why Modi ji? Why they were on the roads in 2020? Again, why they are on the roads in 2024? क्यों अनशन कर रहे हैं? 2020 में क्यों किया और आज भी किसान भाइयों क्यों अनशन की एक रास्ता अपनाया 2024 में? बताइए आप. Now, these are the things which I am trying to. Here are the demands. ये थे मुद्दे. मिनिमम सपोर्ट प्राइस इट शुड बी लीगली डन. कानूनी के तौर पर पार्लियामेंट द्वारा जो मिनिमम सपोर्ट प्राइस की बात करती है, हर एक फसल के ऊपर वो लागू होनी चाहिए, और बाद में ऐसे ऋण का माफ भी करनी चाहिए, और उनको ऋण मिलने का भी एक अवकाश होना चाहिए. ये सब कुछ है. तो हम चलते हैं हमारे अतिथि के पास. यस सर, आई थिंक नाउ आई डोंट वांट टू वेस्ट मच टाइम. योर ऑडियो.
Yeah,
Please go ahead.
thank you very much, Dr. Sivaprasad Reddy garu. I think let me begin by making a larger kind of, let's say, statement that when it comes to the question of the present farmers' mobilization in favor of some of the demands, of which the central demand appears to be legal guarantee for the minimum support price for agricultural commodities. If before we get into that of the questions whether is it economically possible, financially viable to provide the legal guarantee for all the produce of legal guarantee of minimum support price for all the produce of farmers, we'll come to that. We may have to understand the farmers' demand, highlighting MSP as the centerpiece in a larger context. I would make a statement saying that this demand for MSP, and there are of course large number of other things which go with that, which also reflect the farmer's condition. The demand for MSP is both symbolic as well as substantive. What do we mean by symbolic? See that what the farmers are demanding, essentially they're demanding that agriculture cannot be carried on without state intervention or support. There is no country in the world where agriculture is left to that of so-called free market. Even the so-called paradise of free market like the United States or let's say the European countries. There is hardly any country in the world where the state support doesn't come to that of agriculture, because of course the United States would feel that the state support is essential because one of the critical kind of an output, food from agriculture, cannot be left to that of, let's say, market risks, uncertainties. The risk uncertainties are, let's say, the basic things of any capitalist system. If everything is left to that, you can leave other things. You can have a stock market rising up and down. But if, let's say, agricultural prices go up, the whole community perhaps would rise, and then there will not be any government surviving. So therefore, they want to secure political stability through that of securing stability of farmers' conditions of living. And in countries like United States or Europe, where the farming population is hardly about, let's say, 2% of the total working population, or where the farming output is only just about 2% of the total GDP, or in Europe, let's say about 5%, or in even Japan, it's about 10 to 15%. Both, let's say, farming workforce as well as, say, farming GDP. In a country where we have about 45% of the workforce in agriculture, still having only a meager share of only about 15 to 18% of the GDP, one can imagine the kind of inequity by the very definition of, let's say, what could be called distribution of nation income. That they are more in number as workers, but they have less share in, let's say, the total produce. I mean, this sums up the condition of agriculture at farming as well as the farmers. And under these conditions, is it possible to have, let's say, agriculture system left to that of, let's say, market forces? This is exactly where the present regime had right from the beginning. In fact, all of us would know right from 2019, I mean, all of us have a memory. Some of us older people have a longer memory. See that never before there was such a huge mobilization across the country by farmers in 2019. That's before, let's say, the last parliamentary elections, highlighting their kind of, let's say, crisis. In fact, ever since 90s, when there was, in the name of liberalization, the state investment in agriculture has come down. The investments in agriculture has increased, the costs have increased, the returns have started coming down. There has never been as much of, let's say, crisis like that of suicides of farmers extensively from 90s onwards. It is in this context farmers are coming demanding support of the state, intervention of the state to, let's say, help farmers to overcome their crisis. So the symbolically, as I was saying, that see that just as the farmers mobilized in such huge numbers, unprecedented numbers in 2019, instead of, let's say, trying to bring in more of state and state kind of, let's say, support to that of farming community, they came with that of completely opposite set of, let's say, laws, which meant that state would withdraw from the, let's say, the so-called farming support by introducing laws which would leave, let's say, the farming market without regulation to that of private markets. That state would, let's say, withdraw regulation on, let's say, the stocking, withdraw Essential Commodities Act. State would permit corporate entry into that of agriculture to that of contract farming. This was shocking for the farmers, and therefore they sat there. For the first time, we hear from the farmers a slogan which says that there is Adani kind of, let's say, capital intervention into the agriculture. It was a fact. By the time these three laws were brought in 2020 or 2019, that when it comes to the question of, let's say, the biggest grain storage was held under the aegis of, let's say, Adanis. The biggest importer of oil seeds was Adanis. Therefore, farmers knew that the government is pushing their fate into that of the hands of private markets, and therefore they started sitting there for more than almost until, let's say, from the beginning of 2020 to that of until late November 2021. So essentially, when they're demanding, let's say, minimum support price backed by legal kind of, let's say, guarantee, they are asking that you cannot absolve the responsibility of providing a decent price for the produce, fair, decent price for the produce of farmers. And therefore, they are coming again. That say that all kinds of things were said. In the Supreme Court, they argued that perhaps it is not possible to satisfy all those things. And then in November, when they came to an agreement, they appointed a committee. It's like a jumbo committee with 29 members. Farmers refused to join through their representative in the committee because that committee was loaded with that of those people who are arguing in favor of free markets. And therefore, now they have come back because they waited too long. That committee of 29 members has never given a report. So therefore, the farmers are back onto the streets. And then again, I mean, just as earlier, again, what they are asking is, besides a long list, I think it has been shown here, they are asking for MSP as one of the main, let's say, kind of demands. So now all kinds of lame excuses are given without going into that of, let's say, systematic analysis of, let's say, whether it is possible in terms of, let's say, proper evaluation, whether it's possible to give MSP to the farmers' produce. They keep on showing all kinds of excuses. I mean, we know that minimum support price, we started with that of rice and wheat in 1960s. Has gradually been expanded, more crops have been included. Now, of course, there are about 23 crops for which there is minimum support fixed by the government. And then they suggest that it will not be possible for the government to assure minimum support legally for all the crops. I mean, that the demand is for beyond 23 crops. It's not merely 23, because it would involve, let's say, huge costs. I mean, that all kinds of mind-boggling kind of estimates are given. If you have to buy all the produce produced by the farmers, it would be something like 20 lakh crores to that of 10 lakh crores to that of 15 lakh crores. But I think assuring minimum support price for farmers' produce doesn't mean that the government will purchase every grain or, let's say, kg of produce that farmers produce. It is only an assurance that if there were to be any decline in the price, as guarantees as a minimum support. It's a minimum support. It's not even called as highly remunerative price. Minimum taking in consideration what we have been repeatedly hearing, which is fair enough, that say C2 plus, let's say 50%, that no other product produced by, let's say, for commercial or for that matter, industrial purposes will have less than that kind of a margin. And therefore, the demand is fair, but the rejection of this demand on the basis that it involves huge cost is now called as a bluff. There is no need for, let's say, 10 to 15 lakh crores to implement minimum support price legally, because, when it comes to the question of, let's say, prices, we know that agricultural prices or agricultural products, unlike, let's say, industrial and other kinds of products, do not come to the market continuously. Agriculture has major 2 seasons, and therefore the output comes only in seasons. Therefore, when it's harvest season, whether it is kharif or, let's say, rabi, whatever crops grown come in, let's say, huge quantities. It's an elementary thing. If you allow these huge supplies into the market, if you don't intervene to buy them at a price guaranteed, the prices will collapse. And the traders will hold it. They will buy at cheap. Let's say when the harvest happens, the prices collapse, they buy at very low price. But the supplies go on. The supplies, but the demand is, let's say, spread over, let's say, next of 6 months. And therefore, those who hoard it at the harvest time, which are big business, could do that. They release it every month with increased prices. This would make, let's say, the entire agriculture, the farmers get very low price, the consumers end up paying, let's say, huge prices as the things go on until next season. So this is a simple kind of a situation. And then when it comes to the question of can the government intervene and buy all the prices, nowhere the government, unless for certain purposes, like for instance, the government of India procures, let's say, wheat, rice in substantial quantities for, let's say, meeting its requirements. There is an act called Food Security Act. There is a public distribution system. There is a huge kind of, let's say, public requirement of food supplies. The consumers who are largely poor, they have to be provided, let's say, the basic kind of, let's say, staple food grains at, let's say, reasonable prices. Reasonable price here would be C2 plus, let's say, 50%, may not be very exorbitant price. But the government of India takes upon itself the responsibility of procuring these 2 crops, major crops, and then supplying the food even free. That 800 people in 800 million people are provided free food for next 5 years. How could you do it? Because they are poor, because you would like to, let's say, have the support of the people, you are giving it free. You can give it free food grains. You don't have to give everything like that. And then same thing, you don't procure every grain of output in other cases. They would say that now there are 23 crops. Of the 23 crops, 16 crops account for about 90% of all the agricultural produce. And then when it comes to the question of prices, already now 23 crops are minimum support prices. Of the 16 crops which account for 90% of the total agricultural produce, only 8 crops are the ones which are below minimum support price. That means the other 8 crops you don't have to give. They're in the market more than the market prices are more than MSP you have fixed. And even for when it comes to the question of these 8 crops, the latest situation shows of the 8 crops, 4 important crops are oilseeds. Oilseed prices is less than MSP, which is a very strange situation. It's because we are short of edible oil in the country by almost 50%. Because we will get huge imports of oil as well as oilseeds, the prices are depressed. And therefore, if you give MSP to that of, let's say, oilseeds producers or farmers, they will increase production. Your burden on imports would come down. But there is another story behind this oilseeds being heavily imported. Who are the major importers? Ask anybody, ask any oil. Go to supermarkets, see what perhaps are shown. Fortune. There's so many varieties of Fortune. It's a fortune for somebody who is making that oil. And it's unfortunate for people who perhaps buy it. He is the biggest importer of oil. I mean, he is also biggest importer of coal. That's a different thing. Let's say that there is almost a monopoly kind of situation for oil seeds. Imports more, depresses local prices. So MSP for satisfying MSP of oil seeds would also promote production of oil seeds in the country,
Yes.
reduce dependence on foreign countries, improve, let's say, the condition of the farmers, increase the demand from farmers, and increase their, let's say, the overall production and aggregate demand itself, let's say, is stimulated like that. So similarly, when perhaps the estimates are made, then we refer to that besides the staple wheat, let's say paddy, which is now procured for public distribution system, government can perhaps, we don't have any problem, let's say, if they are trying to, because no, although their estimates of poverty now shows 5%, but on the counter, other side of the coin is that you are giving free food to that 800 million people. Why?
That's what.
You know that it's all this 5% estimate of poverty is all bunkum. It doesn't make any sense. If people, only 5% of the people of 140.
That's what it is a common sense question posed to Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji and Modi ji and Amit Shah ji. अगर गरीब पूरा खत्म हो गया तो 80 करोड़ लोगों के लिए आप पब्लिक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन द्वारा क्यों दे रहे हैं आप अनाज सब कुछ?
And we are happy because your statistics, we may question about 5% poverty. We will not question distributing free food to poor people. They're all poor, whether you count them as poor or let's say rich. In India, their own statistics show everybody who gets more than 25,000 a month is supposed to be rich. Imagine that almost all people in the drivers, watchmen, all these people get 25. They're all also rich in this country. Therefore, poverty would be the poverty level. No, we'll not get into that. But now the question is it true that the government should incur such huge, let's say, investments? Of all the institutions, you know that CRISIL is a private kind of an institution, commercial kind of, let's say, institution. Its own estimates for 22, 23 shows that if the government tries to procure, let's say, if you leave, let's say, of the 23 commodities, 16 or let's say 90%, of which 8 don't require thing. The remaining 8 crops, where the procurement, the so-called MSP is less than, the market price is less than MSP, the expenses they estimate would involve, let's say, about 6 lakh crores. But these 8 crops are the crops not going to be distributed in the public distribution system. They're not wheat and rice. That they are the crops for which there is a demand. So therefore, the government buys for MSP and releases it at the right time. As I said, that harvest time, the prices fall, you buy at MSP. Later, the supplies are released at MSP, or let's say you can even use a margin if necessary. And therefore, they say even if you spend for buying, assuming it's not true, assuming all 8 crops which do not have price equivalent to or price which have price less than MSP. If you buy it 6 lakh crores of rupees, but since you are going to dispose of, the total transaction cost would be not more than 21,000 crores, which is nothing but 0.02% of the total national income. For the sake of, let's say, farmers' protection, you can do that kind of investment. Because, suddenly you come out with that of DBT, you transfer Kisan, you suddenly develop love for Kisans and give, let's say, a few lakh crores. And then this is worth, let's say, in satisfying the demand that they must get a fair price for really their producers are asking. You are, of course, when you are talking about PM Kisan, we don't know how many people are really producers. You are just distributing to people who are holding less than 5 acres of time. That's one aspect of it. Then I think when it comes to the government and then talk in terms of the storage facility and all that, actually the demand for, that's why I said that it's symbolic as well as substantive, the demand for MSP, it is symbolic to insist that agriculture cannot be carried on under the present conditions with, let's say, structurally, let's say, dominated by small marginal farmers who account for 86% of the total farming community. They also cultivate near half the total area cultivated. They have been experiencing a relative decline in their kind of levels of living. Even according to 2018-19, the so-called situation assessment of farmers, the average household income of agriculture, those who are in agriculture, is just about 10,000 rupees. That is without taking into consideration the imputed cost for their own work. If you deduct that, the actual income of a farming household, average income of a household, not individual, household, is about, let's say, 8.2 rupees per month, which is, I think, one of the lowest kind of, let's say, income levels, which is, I think, less than a casual laborer's kind of, let's say, household income. See, because they also earn, if they earn, let's say, again, with a minimum wage assured to them, they earn much more. I think here is shown what could be called as, let's say, the agricultural kind of household income, the average monthly income. One of the lowest here, in fact, if you compare it with that of earlier, the earlier statistics we have is for about 2012 and 13. There's not much of it. This is exactly where in the beginning it is said the Modi promise. What did he do in 2015? He said he would double the farmers' income by 22. Where is the doubling of farmers? This is the doubling of farmers' income. If you compare it to that of 12, 13, it's hardly, let's say, about 13, 14% increase. So while, of course, the inequalities in the country, everybody knows is increasing, where, of course, the top 10% of the people own more than 55% of the total, let's say, assets in the country. You refer to that of the farming community with an average income of, let's say, 10,218 rupees per month as something which you would like to leave it to that of market. It becomes disastrous from the point of view.
We have last 9 minutes, sir. Now, I think you have just 9 minutes we have.
Yeah, okay. So what perhaps is suggested is that if we take into consideration, there is also another important dimension to this. Although the present Samyukta Kisan Morcha which is on the streets. But of course, behind them, there is also the other Samit, because there is small division. But I think one thing must be seen in the farmers' movement now. Unlike 1980s, when the farmers came out, still there were no reforms. There is some kind of stability in the farming incomes. Still there were dominance of the large farmers, rich farmer. In fact, when Tikait and others came in UP mobilizing farmers for, let's say, more subsidies and all that, people even in the left started calling them, it's all kulaks and all that. The basic character of the present movement is if you look at, let's say, the people who are gathered on the borders of Delhi, they are small farmers, agriculture workers, most of them poor people. So it is a large farmer people's movement. In fact, it is, let's say, geography, which perhaps doesn't involve as many people from across the country. In fact, the worst condition of farming is seen in South, actually, because our cost
There was
of
a rally in
production,
Hyderabad also.
there
Days
is a
back,
rally
there was a rally in Hyderabad also, big rally, even the ruling Congress supported, but after that, we don't know what has happened.
No, tomorrow also under the same organization, and they are mobilizing. There is a meeting going on even today.
Okay.
They are mobilizing in huge numbers in support of, let's say, the farmers' demands. And therefore, it is a mass farmers' movement. And the crisis in
Why?
the
Because there is a troll. They are having cars. They are very rich. BMWs. This is how they are being blamed. And now I've shown you what Modi is saying. We have disbursed so many loans in Punjab and Haryana. We have given minimum support price to so many. Then if that is the case, why are they on the roads? That is one. The second question is, when all other products, they are allowed minimum and maximum retail price. How is that the farmer is not allowed? And it is a directly saleable product, because without food, we cannot survive. And third interesting aspect, when Adani Fortune companies are importing oil seeds and other essential produce, why don't government give subsidies or encourage farmers on such oil seeds and such produce which are being imported, benefiting this company? The fourth, why storage? Food Corporation of India is failing when it comes to hoarding, like Adani, Ambani's companies. Yes, sir. We have 6 minutes.
See, in fact, that's what the second dimension of this having state in support of the farmers is, that you have to think in terms of, let's say, facilities that perhaps help farmers. I mean, that for a long time we have been talking in terms of warehousing and warehousing receipts, which could be used for as a transactional kind of receipts for getting loan. That means when the harvested produce is likely to face a depressed price, the market, you can store in the warehouse, get a warehouse receipt, use that money for your investment for the next crop. And once, of course, the season passes, then the prices come up, and then the prices increase, farmers can sell. He need not sell the farm produce at the harvest time at a depressed price. That means that government must have an infrastructure investment in storage facilities, support and facilitate proper ecosystem to that of what now they're trying to talk of farmers, producers, organizations. Help them, provide them. See, in fact, there is a big movement today, right now, I think there is a program of what is called as Telangana Mahila Shakti. In fact, the SIG program reached a point where proper support, they could play a role in procurement, storage, if you give proper support, storage facilities. At that point, I think it is a tragedy in Telangana that has been scuttled. Otherwise, they were on those lines. Now, I think we hope it could be revived. Such support systems needed. The state supports, but substantially the center must be in a position to provide infrastructure facilities. In fact, whatever that is not given as priority sector loans under agriculture by the banks, which go into that of rural development fund, IDA or rural industrial development fund.
Yeah, we have
The
3
biggest
minutes. We have 3 minutes. My only direct question to you is, when Adani Ambanis get loans for storage, hoarding, warehouses, cold storage plants, how is that the government, whether it's state or central governments, are not in a position to do the same, which would have helped the rural youth and Mahila women direct employment, and farmer would have stored it, and at the right time he could have sold it by getting his minimum investment price.
Right. I come back to this. Thank you for the question, because I come back to where I started saying that the MSP is a symbolic demand for having the state in, let's say, agriculture. So come to agriculture support. What has happened is right from 1990s, early 90s, if you take into consideration the state share in the gross fixed capital investment in agriculture.
3 minutes, sir. 3 minutes time. Yeah, please go ahead.
State's investment in agriculture, state gross capital investment in agriculture has continuously come down. Whereas agriculture has been left to that of, let's say, if you refer to that of a farmer, he is investing in, let's say, his own, let's say, buying of agriculture machinery. But also, one of the important things that he invests, that much of the irrigation now is through that of groundwater irrigation. The whole risk involved in that, and then, of course, the investments are made by the farmers themselves. The burden of investing in agriculture on the small marginal farmers increases, where the state is trying to withdraw from all these responsibilities. Same, the demand for MSP is the demand for state investment in agriculture, not only just, let's say, buying or, let's say, ensuring legality to that of MSP, but also ensuring adequate investment in agriculture for infrastructure. That would help, infrastructure like storage, warehouses,
Yes,
and marketing facilities, including that cold storage, if you come to fruits and vegetables, also as a part of MSP.
or perishable goods.
Yeah.
So I think we
Possible
will continue with another second part, because this needs more time. We have to
We'll
do
do that.
justice to the farmers. Now only 1 minute time. You want to state anything straight away?
I would also say that the other important dimension is what farmers are asking for, either by way of MSP or any other state intervention in agriculture, should not be seen as mere demand of the farmers, so that the rest of the society can look as onlookers. It is a serious issue which is likely to affect large number of not only the poor but rest of the country if we neglect, let's say, agriculture. Therefore, it requires larger support from working class, business, small business, and, let's say, other people who are in services. It is a national question.
Right.
Agriculture is a
It is a national question. We'll come back in series, and it will this issue, farmers issue, MSP issue, belongs to everyone. So
Right.
everyone has to rise to the occasion. Without food, you cannot survive. Without agriculture, there is no environment. And if farmlands give away to real estates, you don't get food, climate heats up, and you do not have proper climate to survive. So do support DRTSPR channels, Citizens DRTSPR channel, and Environment People DRTSPR channels. They are all in larger public interest. You can participate from wherever you are, and we will continue this in series also.